Long before there were laws or dispensaries or teenagers hiding it from their parents, humans and one particular plant had already been tangled together for thousands of years. Cannabis is not a modern invention. It is one of the oldest plants our species ever bent to its will, grown, harvested, traded, and, yes, burned and breathed in by people who lived and died thousands of years before you were born. But here's the part almost nobody expects. When ancient humans first sat in the smoke of this plant, it very likely was not to relax, or to party, or to feel good. It was something far stranger and far darker than that. The first people to breathe this smoke may have been doing it to speak with the dead. So how far back does it really go? And how did a wild weed end up at the center of some of humanity's oldest rituals? The real story is much older and much weirder than you think. Cannabis is a survivor. It grows fast, grows almost anywhere, and it gives humans a lot of useful things at once, which is exactly why we noticed it so early. Long before anyone was interested in getting high, our ancestors valued this plant for something much more practical: its tough, stringy fibers. Thousands of years ago, people were already growing a form of it we now call hemp, twisting its fibers into some of the strongest rope and cloth of the ancient world. Its seeds were food, packed with oil and nutrition. In other words, humans first fell in love with cannabis not as a drug, but as a hardware store, rope, fabric, and a meal, all from a single fast-growing plant. The mind-altering side of it was a discovery still waiting to happen. So how did we go from making rope to breathing smoke? No one wrote it down, but the story almost tells itself. Picture ancient people burning plants, for cooking, for warmth, for clearing land. Toss the wrong bundle of dried cannabis onto a fire, sit downwind in the drifting smoke, and sooner or later somebody feels something. The world tilts. The mind floats. To an ancient human with no idea what a chemical was, that feeling would not seem like a drug. It would seem like magic, like the plant was reaching into your head and changing you. And a plant that can do that is not treated as a snack or a rope. It is treated as something sacred, a doorway to another world. That single accidental lungful may have turned an ordinary weed into a holy thing, and that is exactly how the earliest users seem to have treated it. When we dig up the oldest hard evidence of humans deliberately inhaling cannabis smoke, we do not find people lounging around for fun. We find ritual. We find ceremony. We find the plant burned in special containers, in special places, for special moments. The kind of moments where people believed they were touching the spirit world. To these ancient humans, the dizzy, dreamlike state the smoke gave them was not entertainment. It was a tool, a way to leave the ordinary world behind and step, for a few minutes, into the realm of gods, spirits, and the dead. The high was not the point. Where the high could take you, that was the point. The clearest window we have into this comes from a burial ground high in the mountains of Central Asia, dating back roughly 2,500 years. There, in an ancient cemetery, archaeologists found wooden braziers, little vessels holding stones that had been burned black by fire. And when they tested the residue on those stones, they found the chemical signature of cannabis, and not the weak wild kind, but plants unusually high in the compound that gets you high. Think about what that means. High in the cold mountains, thousands of years ago, people gathered around a grave, dropped cannabis onto hot stones, and filled the air with potent smoke. This was a funeral. The smoke was part of saying goodbye, quite possibly a way to enter a trance and reach out toward the person they had just lost. The oldest clear evidence of getting high is tangled up with death itself. And these mountain people were not alone. An ancient historian, writing well over 2,000 years ago, described a fierce group of nomadic horsemen who did something remarkable. They would set up a small, closed tent, heat stones red-hot inside it, and throw cannabis onto them. Then they sat in the thick, billowing smoke that filled the space, a kind of ancient smoke-filled sauna. According to the account, they would howl and shout with pleasure inside these tents, intoxicated by the vapor. For a long time, this sounded like a tall tale, an exaggeration from a distant writer. But then archaeologists started finding the actual gear, the tent frames, the burners, the scorched cannabis seeds, buried with these very people. The strange old story turned out to be true. Humans have been getting collectively, deliberately high in enclosed spaces for a very, very long time. Here's a question worth asking. Why was the cannabis in that mountain grave so unusually strong? Wild cannabis is often weak, barely enough to cloud your head. But the plants burned at that funeral were potent. One likely answer is us. As humans found and used these plants over generations, it makes sense that they would notice which ones hit harder, and favor them, protect them, maybe even plant them. Whether by deliberate breeding or simply by choosing the strongest wild plants they could find, humans may have slowly nudged cannabis toward the powerful strains that suited their rituals. It is a very old version of a very modern story, people finding a plant and then quietly shaping it, over centuries, into something more intense than nature first offered. The bond between us and this plant was never one way. Once cannabis was woven into human life, it traveled the way all valuable things did, on the backs of traders. As caravans and merchants moved goods across continents, along the great trade routes that stitched the ancient world together, the plant and its uses spread with them. Hemp, fur rope, and cloth went one way. Knowledge of the smoke and its power went another. Different cultures met the plant and made it their own, folding it into their medicine, their worship, and their customs. A funeral rite in the mountains, a smoke tent on the plains, a field of hemp for a navy's ropes, all of it flowing outward along the same dusty roads. This single plant hitched a ride on human trade, and over thousands of years, quietly spread itself across much of the world, long before any modern border existed. It was not only about trance and death. As the plant spread, ancient peoples also reached for it as medicine and as a part of worship. In various old traditions, cannabis shows up as a treatment, something to ease pain, calm the body, or help with a long list of ailments, long before anyone understood how it actually worked. And in certain religious practices, it was burned or consumed as a sacred offering, a way to honor the divine and lift the mind toward it. For many ancient humans, this one plant sat at the crossroads of everything that mattered most: the body and its suffering, the gods and their mysteries, and the fragile line between the living and the dead. It was practical and holy at the same time, a rare thing to be both. Step back and look at the sheer depth of time here. Humans have been growing and using this one plant for thousands upon thousands of years, for rope, for food, for medicine, for worship, and for the strange doorway its smoke seemed to open. Countless generations of people, whose names are long gone, sat in that smoke for reasons that mattered deeply to them: to mourn, to heal, to pray, to reach for something beyond the ordinary world. The modern argument about this plant, legal or not, good or bad, is just the newest chapter in a story that is almost unimaginably old. Long before it was a headline or a law, cannabis was a companion to human beings, standing at the edges of life and death, staring into the smoke and hoping to see something on the other side. So when did ancient humans start smoking weed? The honest answer is far, far earlier than most people imagine, and for reasons that would surprise them. Not for fun, at first. Not to relax after a long day, but to grieve, to heal, and to touch a world they believed lay just beyond this one. The plant that so many people today treat so casually was, for our ancestors, a sacred and serious thing, burned at funerals, breathed in holy tents, carried across continents as one of humanity's oldest and strangest companions. We did not just stumble onto this plant recently. We have been walking alongside it for almost the whole journey of civilization. So the next time this plant comes up, in a law, in a joke, in a conversation, remember what sits behind it. Thousands of years of human beings breathing that same smoke, most of them not to escape their lives, but to reach for something bigger than themselves. Every strange, ancient ritual on a cold mountain, every smoke-filled tent, every field of hemp fed into the same long human story you are still living in today. We tend to think our habits are new. Most of them are unimaginably old. If little forgotten roots like this fascinate you, the deep, weird history hiding behind ordinary things, stick around. Ever wondered what else has been with us far longer than you ever realized?